Very convenient way of chewing up the time, doesn't it?
Okay. To the world.
Fantastic. Well,
Right.
welcome everyone to the Politico Pub, and thank you very much for Pat McFadden, the Work and Pension Secretary, for coming and being our first on-stage event at the pub. This is first this weekend, yeah, and we've got a whole host of your colleagues coming later on. So this is much more like a real pub than pretty much anything I've seen at conference. We've got a dartboard, we've got the stuff on the walls, we've got an actual bar, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So this is called a round with, not a session with. It's not one of these 1 hour in conversation type things. We're looking for kind of a short, sharp chat, some fun stuff,
is that
some
a warning?
serious stuff. Yeah, I think
It's a
short
warning.
answers probably is a sensible thing. But that's what all journalists say to all politicians, isn't it? So
Okay.
do our
Yeah.
best. Yeah.
The pub looks great. I like it.
Yeah. So what drink have you got there, Pat? We'll start
I've
with.
got a Diet Coke, and the reason I've got a Diet Coke is I do dry conference in recent years. Now I've got a confession to make. No one's listening, are they?
No live stream. No.
I haven't always done dry conference in the past. As a younger man, probably burned a candle at both ends a little bit at conference, but no more. In recent years, this suits me better, so hence the Diet Coke.
Well,
otherwise, I'd be having a pint of Guinness in here.
What was your worst drunken conference mistake then?
Oh, I don't want to confess. I think they've turned on the live stream, so.
Okay, fine. Well, look, let's get through a bit of the interview now. You've just been moved to Work and Pensions in the last month. You've got a bit of a formidable CV. You're the former Shadow Chief Secretary. You were the campaign chief who helped win the election last year. You were the PM's sort of Whitehall enforcer as Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster. Now DWP. So your colleagues once called you, pardon my French, tighter than a duck's arse. Wes Streeting once said that if you say spending 3 times, he will apparate with a scythe. How much has the PM moved you into DWP to slash the welfare bill?
Well, I mean, I think that's because I was on the Shadow Treasury team as the Shadow Chief Secretary, and your job is to say no, really, a lot of the time. And it helps with people to say, I would do what you want, but those awful people on the Shadow Treasury team won't let me. So the move into DWP, it's a very exciting thing because it's such an important part of the country. I think our debate on it in the last year or two has all revolved around disability benefits, but the biggest thing it does is pays the state pension. Everything in DWP is big numbers. It spends over £300 billion a year, and the majority of that is on the state pension credit, associated pensioner benefits. And the other 45% is on the rest. So it's big numbers, millions of people. It's good to be there.
So I know you're not going to get into kind of the details of this stuff, but when we do talk about working age benefits, right, the difficult bit, if you like, the bit where you have said that too much is being spent and this kind of has to be brought under control, I think. Give me an idea, not of the detail, but just of the scale. So the party, struggled to get about £5.5 billion of cuts through this summer. Are we talking, what needs to come out of that budget? Are we talking that, double that, triple that?
I don't think picking a number and going for it that way is the best way to do this. I think we need to think about what the welfare state is for. And when the Prime Minister made his change at the reshuffle, it wasn't just the DWP as is. He told me he wanted to add skills to the brief of the department. And the reason he wanted to do that is the DWP has always done some labour market stuff, important labour market stuff, job centre work and so on. But adding skills, the idea behind that is to try and make the skills system face the labour market a bit more, face what employers need a bit more. So that W in the middle of the title, I think, is very important. And I think that the way that Westminster debates welfare reform as a purely budgetary issue is a bit one-dimensional. I'm not saying the budget doesn't matter and the budget pressures don't matter, they do. But the way through this is to get more people into work. I'm speaking to the conference tomorrow. I'll have more to say about that then. And I think I'm pretty confident from the discussions I've had that you'll hear more about that in other speeches too. Speeches from politicians far better known than me.
So a lot of the skills stuff is about young people, isn't it? About people who've just come out of school or uni who are NEETs, if you want to call it that. They've kind of fallen down a gap in something. How much, when it comes to, I know there's a lot of skills stuff going into that, but when it comes to the welfare budget, how much are you looking at changes there? I think there's been talk about changes to universal credit for under 22s, for example.
Well, when you go into a new department, it's a bit like one of those intensive language courses where you have to just get steeped in it completely. And I was steeped in 1 million PowerPoint slides. Well, it felt like 1 million, probably wasn't 1 million. All and everything from pensions to carers allowance to child poverty to all sorts of parts of the system. And one of the slides that really jumped out at me was what's going on with young people and mental health, and the number of young people who are now leaving education and going on to long-term sickness benefits with mental health conditions. Of the people claiming the health element of universal credit, 80% of them who are under the age of 25 do so declaring a mental health condition. So I think there's a big, big question for the country about what is happening here. Why are so many more young people reporting these mental health conditions? And what's the right policy response to that? And that, for me, has been one of the most striking things that I've learned about in the first few weeks of being in the department.
Do you take the line that some kind of conservative or reform politicians say that not all these mental health issues are necessarily, should be categorised as mental health issues?
Well, I'm not a doctor. I think most of them aren't either. And so I don't want to give diagnoses from sitting here or any other studio. For me, the question is really, what should the policy response to this be? Is it right that it be sickness benefits? Should it be more help with working? I'm interested in that and exploring that further. Because there's obviously a concern if a growing number of young people are going on to sickness benefits pretty quickly after they leave education. And I really believe in work. I think it gives people purpose and pride, and I don't want to diagnose anyone's condition, but I think it's really important that we emphasize the central importance and purpose of work. And as a person, a politician, I really believe in that, and I think it's good for people if they are able to do it.
You want to see those numbers come down?
I want to see more young people in work. We've got almost 1 million people not in education, employment or training. The proportion has gone up since COVID. It wasn't great before COVID. It was about 1 in 10. It's about 12.8% or something now. So it's going up, and I think we need to do something about that. And as I say, you'll hear more about that at conference over the next couple of days.
I want to ask you one more kind of welfare spending thing. This is purely hypothetical, of course. If the DWP were to suddenly spend another £3 billion on something, I can't imagine what that could be. It's your principle that that money would have to come out of somewhere else in the welfare budget?
Well, I think it's a broader budgetary issue. Let me answer it this way. Having been part of the former Shadow Treasury team, as we discussed at the beginning, we believe in saying how things are going to be funded. And if we are spending more on something, anything, we have to explain how it's going to be funded, and that's true of any budget or any fiscal event.
Are you sort of comfortable with that amount being spent on raising the two-child limit, which pretty much everyone thinks is going to happen now?
Well, look, we are ambitious about reducing child poverty. Obviously, we look at the impact and effect of different measures. But I do think that the whole government owns all the government's fiscal decisions. And I don't think it's right, really, for individual MPs or ministers to say, I'd love to spend X billions on that. And then when asked, how's it going to be funded, to say, well, that's a matter for the Chancellor.
So your colleagues have got it wrong on this?
It's a matter for all of us. There is collective responsibility there for a reason. And the Chancellor is the person who has the very difficult job of looking at all the different demands, all the different revenue resources, but she shouldn't do that job alone. It needs to be owned by all of us, and I think we owe her a bit of solidarity in the decisions that she's got to make.
Or woe betide all the backbenchers that might cross Pat McFadden in the next few months?
No, not at all. We have a very good dialogue, and I understand that colleagues are coming from a good place. They want things to be done. They want injustices to be addressed. But the task of government is to decide these things in the round. If I could, I don't know how many people were in the hall for Anthony Albanese's speech a couple of hours ago. I thought it was wonderful, and in particular the last 6 or 7 minutes of the speech, where he talked about the history of the Labour Party in both the UK and Australia. And he said, in each country we had made a historic decision, not just to be forces of protest and placards, but to actually go into Parliament and take the responsibility of government. That isn't a small statement. It's a really profound understanding of the importance of that decision, and with it comes some pretty hard yards, because it's the easiest thing in the world to demand this, that and the next thing, or to denigrate things or tear them down. The Labour Party here and in Australia have adopted a different road, which is to aspire to the responsibilities that government brings. And that means on these budgetary decisions, you can't say yes to everything. And when you do say yes to something, you have to account for how it's going to be paid for.
I'm going to whip through some other things now.
Okay.
I want to talk about digital ID.
Right.
You're a friend of Tony Blair in the government. Has he talked to you about it?
Many times. He's a big fan of it, yeah.
Yeah, so you helped. Well, how big were you a force in sort of bringing this as a thing in the government?
Well, I went to Estonia about a month ago and looked at how they had used this for not years but decades, and I asked probably some very naive questions about how it worked, and they have just built their public services around this. So if you want to, for example, register your ownership of a car, you want to do your tax return, you want to really any public service, you have a PIN number, you go in and you do it, and it's right through life. They've been doing it for years. It's their natural way to go. And when I told them, well, in the UK, what we're really fond of to prove our identity is searching in a drawer to try and find a tatty council tax bill to prove it, they thought that was a little bit quaint.
How do you want to use it in the benefit system? Just
well, I think
briefly.
What
would people actually need it for?
I think, well, it's to prove identity. So it could have applications on fraud, for example. Are you still in the country? Are you entitled to the things that you said you were when you were in the country? So I think we do want to explore this. What is it at the end of the day? It is a digital expression of the other forms of identity that we have, whether that's a passport or a driving license. And we're moving towards digital driving licenses anyway, so we're going to have something quite like this in our phones quite soon. And I think that the potential for convenience for people in accessing public services is really high. So, you know, I think the Prime Minister's absolutely right to ask us to do the work on this. I hope to be part of that work, and for all the different departments in government who could make a better public service offer to the public through this to do it. And I think after it had come in and it had been in operation for a while, we'd probably end up wondering what all the fuss was about.
Move on briefly to some politics. You were the one behind that landslide victory last year, or one of the people in HQ. How do you think it's going?
I think it's we're doing a lot of good things. I was very honoured to be asked to be the campaign coordinator. And one of the things that strikes me about the debate in the last number of months is people perhaps underestimate how rare Labour victories have been. They don't fall from the sky. They're hard won, and they're hard won, and they only happen when leaders have got the courage to take the right decisions and to win people's trust. It isn't just a matter of publishing a manifesto and saying, vote for me. There's an underlying, when the voters are taking a look at a political party, especially the prospect of putting a government out and putting an opposition party in, they ask themselves, can I trust these people? And you know, are they fit for the job? And I think Keir deserves far more credit than he's getting for winning that trust and completing that task. So here we are, a year in. I could go through a list of things, which you'll hear this weekend, and I'm happy to.
Okay.
Happy to do that. It's okay, yeah. And I think every day we see the government doing good things. Let me just do two from this week while we're here. I can't say that without mentioning nothing. So the money for towns all over the country, like my constituency, which have felt forgotten for a long time. There was a whole list of places announced the other day. I think that can make a real difference, and it's going to be community-led. The second thing, the package of support that we announced and Peter Kyle announced last night for Jaguar Land Rover supply chain makes a huge difference to a region like mine in the West Midlands. I'm a Wolverhampton MP, and day by day you see a government willing to step up and address problems. And of course, we've got to tell the story of all that and get all that over, but I see a government that's doing good things every day, and I think you're going to hear a lot more about what we want to do in the next few days over the conference.
The community funding has obviously the stamp of Morgan McSweeney, a great ally of yours. In number 10, you said this week is very talented.
Yeah.
He's been under fire lately. Why do you think people dislike him?
Well, I don't know if you remember a time long ago when the political world was obsessed by people called spin doctors. Do you remember spin doctors?
I think we still are at Politico.
Are they, a spin doctor still a thing?
Yeah, of course.
Are they still
I think
a thing?
yours is in this anyway.
So they were obsessed by spin doctors, and of course the most well-known so-called spin doctor was Alistair Campbell. And the Tories were attacking him for being a spin doctor, mainly. And Nicholas Soames popped up and said, look, rather than attacking him, maybe we on the Tory side should be trying to find someone as good as him. And I think that the attacks on Morgan are in part because he's good and he's effective, and our opponents would rather he wasn't there.
Another ally of yours is Peter Mandelson. Do you think he'll rise again?
I'm not sure. I've got much to add to that. You know, the Prime Minister's made a decision. The outcome has been done, and we're going to have to move on, find a new ambassador, and go on from there.
It sounds like you're not ruling it out one day, hey? I suppose we never can. I'll just finish with some quick fire then. I don't know, do we have time for a quick roving mic with one or two questions? Yeah? Right. Favourite Springsteen song?
Oh, God. We could be here all night.
No, please.
We could prove it all night. it's very, very hard to pick one. I think I went to see him in this city on June the 7th this year when Paul McCartney appeared on stage. And the tour was called the Land of Hope and Dreams Tour. And I've always thought Land of Hope and Dreams was a fantastic song because of this notion that Bruce Springsteen had of just traveling on a journey. You don't know where you're going, but you know you won't be back. And
is that a metaphor? Or?
It's a great, there's so many wonderful songs, but if you ask me to pick one, you'd struggle to find a better one than that. It's a wonderful sort of gospel-influenced anthem. I think it's fantastic.
That was very profound, so I feel bad about the next question. Tenets or Buckfast?
Tenets.
Who's more important, Darren Jones or Pat McFadden?
We are collective responsibility.
Nigel Farage or Andy Burnham?
Who's more important?
No, who's your favourite?
Oh, Andy Burnham.
Tony Blair or Keir Starmer?
I get asked that one every time. You got no imagination. And the stock answer is, I've been very fortunate to work with two talented people from quite different political times.
Oh, well, we tried. Are there any questions for a quick roving mic? We have Sam Coates, who has bolted up. So let's
He's
take
not
him
an ordinary member of the public.
We've smuggled him in.
Thank you, Pat McFadden. You talked about the very big importance of being able to say how you fund things that you promised to do. How are you funding the winter fuel U-turn?
Through the stability of the economy, which we ensured. As the Chancellor explained at the time.
I mean, that's not an answer. Because you do have things that you don't fund, and then you do have things that you choose to fund. But it's pick and mix. You've got massive black holes in this budget. How can you sit there and say you fund everything when you quite clearly don't?
Well, there is, of course, public borrowing in the system. And the sources of the government's money are, in the end, the taxes they raise and the borrowing they choose to have. The Chancellor has set out her fiscal rules on how those things can be done in terms of borrowing for investment. I think that can be a good investment for the country. And I think the investments that we are funding through that are a really big contrast to the plans that we inherited. So what I'm saying is we'll always explain how things are funded, and that's what's done at every fiscal event.
It must really annoy you that the triple lock takes up so much of that funding.
Everything's a choice, and we made a choice to protect the triple lock, and we're doing it.
Any more for the roving mic? Yes, back there.
Hello, I'm Charlie from the British Beer and Pub Association, so thank you very much for putting this on as well. A large part of our workforce is 16 to 24-year-olds. Just wanted to hear your perspective on why it's important for young people to get into hospitality and specifically beer and pub work.
I think most people probably work in the hospitality industry at one point in their life. I spent some time as a dishwasher in a Mexican restaurant called Viva Mexico in Coburn Street in Edinburgh, a job I inherited from one John Swinney, who had been the dishwasher before I worked there. So I think these jobs are a really good early entry into the labour market for a lot of young people. And of course, as you'll be aware, if anyone hires somebody under the age of 21, there are no employers' national insurance contributions at all unless that person is earning more than $50,000 a year. So there's an incentive to hire young people there as a first job.
I think there was a national insurance rise at some point, wasn't there? Employers?
Well, I don't think the under-21's position is well enough known. There we are. But maybe now.
We've got a couple more roving mic questions. Let's go for this at the front. Is it about pubs again?
No.
Okay, good.
It is about hospitality, though, because I'm from McDonald's. So I thought I'd follow up that question about look, you talked really positively about youth opportunity and the role that the sector plays. The sector's feeling pretty bruised, given nearly 100,000 job losses across the sector for young people. There's real concern about what's going to happen in the budget or what's coming through the Employment Rights Bill over the next 2 or 3 years. Just really question for you about how you're going to work with the sector to sort of reassure our franchisees and those across the sector to make sure those opportunities are still around in the future.
Well, look, I mentioned the national insurance break for under 21s. I think McDonald's is interesting. We've got local McDonald's franchises, of course, in my constituency, like probably in nearly every constituency. And I asked the owner of a franchise, well, he asked me, he said, guess how many jobs are in this one McDonald's franchise? I don't know how many, you probably know, but the rest of the audience, it was 200 jobs, because most of them were part-time and shift work and so on. So it generates a lot of work. On the Employment Rights Act, look, let me say this. We're the Labour Party. We've always believed that people should have decent rights at work. And quite often, I've found that when we've argued that, people will say it's going to be bad for jobs. That's what people said when the national minimum wage was brought in. It didn't prove to be the case. And I don't think we're asking for too much for people to have decent, predictable hours of work, to be decently paid for what they do, and to try to have some fair rights. You would expect a Labour government to do that, and that's what we're doing.
I think we've got time for one more. Yes, the lady over there.
Hi, I'm Rhiannon from PA. We've heard a lot about reform this conference already, and a lot of the language has been quite defensive, I think we could say. Are you scared of reform? Why do you keep giving them such a platform on when it's like it's meant to be the Labour Party promoting their message?
Well, you'll get plenty of promotion of our message. I gave you a little hint of what I'm expecting in terms of opportunities for young people in some of the speeches over the next couple of days. But look, I was the campaign coordinator for the last election, and I think one of the mistakes that's sometimes made in politics is to perfectly refight the last war. And I could see at the time of the last election that the terrain was shifting. You referred to Tony Blair a few minutes ago. A few days after the election, I went to that thing he organises, I forget what it's called, they call it Glastonbury for Centrists or whatever it is, that thing in central London. And I was in...
Centrist Dad Conference, I think.
It's the
Centrist
Dad Conference, right, I was there. And I was interviewed by John Sopel on the stage, a bit like this, and I said the next election will be very different because our opponent on the right is going to be a very different one from a traditional Conservative party. I think that Rishi Sunak campaign felt to me like the end of an era for the Conservatives. Now, I couldn't have predicted 14, 15 months ago exactly what the balance would be between Reform and the Conservatives in that changing picture. And I'm not sure I can predict that exactly today, because today, the next election's a few years away. So I think it's important to show an awareness that the terrain is changing. So I make no apology for us recognising that the terrain has changed, and that's why we'll talk about that party and some of the mistakes they've made, and I think they've made a couple of big ones recently.
It's not just about mistakes, though. You're making a moral case now. So you've got the Prime Minister saying for the first time today, really, that a big reform policy is racist. Are you not worried that despite the clarification that Keir Starmer said, that people who want to vote for reform are going to look at that and they're going to see that he's calling them racist?
No, I think that's a willful distortion of what he was saying, and I think the people who are saying that know what they're doing. It's a very different thing. What he's pointing out is that if you go to people who've been here legally, didn't come here illegally, worked here legally, paid their taxes, got their indefinite leave to remain, that to then come along and say, we're going to rip all that up and we may threaten to deport you, that is not the way this country does things. And so I think he's quite right to call that out.
Well, on that happy note, I think we're at time. Thank you very much, Pat McFadden, for coming in. Cheers.